Here are 55 amazing facts about Demon Slayer that will blow your mind. Like, we all know that Daki was named Ume because of the disease that killed her mother, but did you know that this disease is actually syphilis? You see, in Japanese, you can read the same letter in two different ways, and if you take the first letter of the word syphilis, you can read it as ume, while you can also use the kanji to spell the word syphilis as well. Also, did you know that Muzan didn't really think much of Daki, considering her to be not very bright, but despite that fact, he pretended to like her because she was a major source of income for him. In the Upper Moon's meeting, Muzan stated that Gyutaro was the real Upper Moon and not Daki. Also, he was one of Muzan's favorite upper ranks because of his greediness and circumstances, showing how much Muzan enjoys suffering and pain. If you want Muzan's favorite Upper Moon and main source of income, you should keep watching the video. Since we established that Gyutaro's mother died from syphilis, it was likely that Gyutaro suffered from congenital syphilis, which occurs when a mother is pregnant while being infected. That would explain Gyutaro's ugly appearance, as the symptoms include deformed skeletal structures, crooked teeth, inflamed gums, and blotches caused by rash. During his fight with Gyutaro, he lost his eye and hand, but did you know that Tengen is one of the only known Demon Slayer and Hashira to retire due to being permanently disabled instead of death or age? The second one was the one and only Jigoro, Zenitsu's grandpa. We all know that Tengen ran away from his shinobi clan because he hated the cycle of death that ran through the family. But did you know that he actually killed two of his brothers without knowing? You see, Tengen's father made his sons fight to the death while being covered with masks, so they didn't really know who they were fighting with. After it was revealed to him that the people he killed was two of his brothers, he left the clan forever. For some time, it became Tengen's habit to say that he was going to hell. This stopped after seeing his wives' reaction, with Makio getting angry with him, Hinatsuri crying for him, and Suma biting him. Also, he would occasionally think of exterminating his entire clan, but he couldn't bring himself to kill his father and brother. Itachi. Remember that we promised to reveal Muzan's favorite Upper Moon? Well, it's no other than Gyokko. But don't be mistaken, it's not that Muzan actually likes someone, but Gyokko's pots are quite beautiful and are sold for high amounts of money. Hey, even the Demon King need that cash sometimes. Also, did you know that Gyokko is one of the only upper ranks, the other being Nakime, who does not have a backstory mentioned in the manga regarding his past or his first meeting with Muzan? However, the second fanbook provides a brief summary of his past as a human. Gyokko lived on the outskirts of a fishing village near the coast, and was disliked for repeatedly collecting fish carcasses and doing other strange things. He lost his parents at an early age. They went out fishing and never came back, their drowned bodies found badly damaged. So the villagers kept their distance, thinking that he had lost his mind. However, Gyokko instead killed a village child who came to tease him and stuffed the body in a jar. It seemed he became fascinated by the beauty of his parents' drowned bodies. Enraged, the child's parents stabbed Gyokko with a two-pronged fishing fork. He was left to die there. Half a day passed and he was still alive. And Muzan was passing by, so he turned Gyokko into a demon. His human name before then was Managi. When he became a demon, he ate children's flesh and modified his body as he liked. Except for Muzan, he despised all living things, and he laughed and sneered at them from the bottom of his heart. And while we're talking about Gyokko, let's mention the one that actually killed him, which is a far more impressive feat than you might think, because he's also the one of the only known Hashira in the series to both overpower and kill an upper rank single-handedly. The other one is Zenitsu. Muichiro always wears clothes that seem like they're 3 sizes larger than he should wear, but there is a reason behind it. He wears them in order to disorient enemies, as they would not be able to see his limbs and joints moving so well. This is supposed to hinder their ability to predict Muichiro's movements. Did you know that Muichiro can't have pets because his crow would get jealous? Also, even before he entered the Demon Slayer Corps, Muichiro would sleep soundly no matter if there was a tempest or a thunderstorm. Let's bring the thunder and talk about Zenitsu for a moment. Did you know that there is actually a good reason why Zenitsu is complaining all the time? In the Mount Nagamoto arc, we saw Zenitsu refusing to get into the woods, even if Inosuke insulted him by calling him pathetic. Part of the reason he refused to get in is because Zenitsu has an insane hearing, and he could hear that something was off about the place. More about his amazing hearing later, so stick around. But the real reason he's complaining all the time is not what you might think. You see, Zenitsu was born in the city and is used to a pretty comfortable life. Unlike Tanjiro and Inosuke, who were both raised in the woods with much harsher conditions. Both Tanjiro and Inosuke probably had to walk dozens of miles every single day, lift heavy loads on their backs, and really struggled just to survive. While Zenitsu was probably sleeping in a comfy bed, eating good food, and didn't really have to work much to survive. No wonder he's screaming every time he has to do something difficult. Speaking of difficult, the Hashira training arc got Zenitsu all upset for a good reason, especially Gyomei's training. Gyomei is often depicted with tears streaming down his face. But do you know the reason why? Well, it's later revealed in an extra chapter that he cries extremely easily at almost anything, even crying for something as minor as when the garbage is messy. I wonder if he would cry over spilled milk as well. Did you know that Gyomei was blinded due to a fever? But, in spite of this blindness, he has a keen sense of sight and was able to avoid malicious actions that some people around him do, like trying to trip him or throwing stuff at him. This made people around him call him a liar, stating that no blind person would be able to do what he does. At one time, Inosuke challenged Gyomei to a match. Gyomei then pounded him headfirst into the ground. But let's be honest, it probably just made Inosuke even more determined to challenge him again in the future. Gyomei is the only Hashira besides Muichiro and Shinobu to have a personal connection to an upper rank, that being upper rank 6, Kaigaku. Kaigaku was one of the orphaned children under Gyomei's care at the temple, and would later be directly responsible for the demon attack that resulted in the death of all the children except Sayo. In a sense, Gyomei and Zenitsu are related. We just spoke about the strongest Hashira, so let's talk about the second strongest, which is Sanemi. Like Kiyoshi, Sanemi is a Marechi, which means his blood is extra tasty to demons. But his blood is considered rarer than the average Marechi. Because of this, the smell of it can intoxicate demons and disrupt their senses and movement speed. This is how he managed to kill so many demons even before he became a demon slayer and without a Nichirin sword. A lot of people see Sanemi as this crazy person, which he kind of is. But the reason is that he'll literally do anything to protect the people he cares about, even if it means dying, being hated, or being ostracized as the bad guy. Also, did you know that every time Sanemi met with Shinobu, he would ask her how she's doing? He's kinda nice for a crazy person. Sanemi shares the same listed height and weight as Muzan Kibitsuji. I'm sure if he knew that, he would gain or lose weight immediately. Out of all the Hashira, who do you think Sanemi is getting along with the most? Go ahead and throw your guess in the comments below. Well, if you said Obanai, you were right. While we're at it, let's talk about Obanai. Obanai's sword is pretty special, but did you know that it was actually made by the son of the swordsmith village chief? His name is Gantetsu Teki Kawahara. Due to his upbringing, Obanai developed fear and hatred towards women. This only worsened after he saw the weak resolve of the female demon slayers. Mitsuri was implied to be the first and only woman he found to be beautiful. Although Obanai doesn't like to eat much, seeing it as too much trouble, seeing Mitsuri happily eat her food made him work up his appetite and eat more than usual. Speaking of his appetite, he actually has the smallest appetite out of all the Hashira. He can go about 3 days without eating. We all know that Obanai loves Mitsuri, but did you know that Obanai's meeting with Mitsuri was love at first sight? He was so dumbfounded that Kaburamaru also started to panic, which for some reason led him to bite Obanai. Ouch. Despite being described as the second weakest member of the Hashira in terms of strength, after Shinobu, Obanai is the only Hashira who was able to contend with Muzan before awakening his Demon Slayer mark. We talked about the Hashira for far too long, so let's go back to the demons, shall we? Did you know that Muzan never really liked Doma, despite his loyalty and worship for him? Also, Doma also made Muzan the figure of worship within his Paradise Faith cult, something that the Demon King didn't like at all. After Kotoha, Inosuke's mother, stumbled into his temple, Doma grew fond of her beauty and singing. He initially never intended to eat her, as he enjoyed her company. Kotoha's husband and mother-in-law also went to the cult, possibly in search of her, but Doma found them noisy and murdered them. He didn't devour them though, only leaving their bodies in the mountains. Muzan wasn't the only one that disliked Doma. Akaza disliked him as well, to say the least. Did you know that Akaza once battled Kokushibo for his position as upper rank 1? He was defeated but spared, despite most challengers being absorbed after losing. Many of Akaza's attacks and techniques are named after fireworks, a reference to his promise to Koyuki to see the fireworks. Also, did you know that Akaza was one of Muzan's favorites? He considered him as loyal and serious. But despite his loyalty, Akaza never felt respect nor awe for Muzan. He only saw him as someone who gave orders and saw himself as someone who must obey. Because he was one of Muzan's favorites, he allowed him not to eat women, a fact that annoyed Upper Moon 2 Doma. Kokushibo was also one of Muzan's favorite, well, he was so favored by Muzan that he didn't consider him his subordinate but his business partner. You probably wonder to yourself why a tyrant like Muzan would consider anyone their partner. Well, it's because Kokushibo was close to annihilating the Demon Slayer Corps multiple times. Did you ever wonder why the Ubuyashiki family lives in such secrecy? Well, Kokushibo once killed a leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. This caused the Corps to put extreme effort in hiding the residence of future leaders. This event was also the one that caused the Kakushi to be formed. Did you miss the Hashira? Well, let's talk about them more. Did you know that Rengoku is actually based on a real person Koyoharu knew? Imagine meeting someone like Rengoku in real life. I'm sure it can be nice sometimes, but most of the time it'll be hard to keep up with him. Speaking of keeping up with him, there's evidence that Kyogoro was a genius. First, the other Hashira actually had a hard time keeping up with his speed. He would talk and reach conclusions very fast, something that made the other Hashira confused from time to time. You see, real-life geniuses tend to have these characteristics as well because their brain can process information much faster than the average man. Second, he became a Hashira by training himself with partial knowledge only after being abandoned by his father. Are you convinced yet? We all know that Rengoku's work and training ethics are on another level, but most of you probably didn't know he never had a Tsuguko. The reason is that his training is so hard, they ended up running away.
Why are you running?
Even Mitsuri couldn't keep up with his training to the point she made her own style of breathing. And she's a Hashira with insane muscle structure. Did you know that a few of Mitsuri's attacks are named after cats? It's due to the fact that she used to own a cat as a child. She and Gyomei also enjoy talking about cats together. I would love to see a 7.2 giant talk about kitties. We all know that Mitsuri has a pretty revealing outfit, but did you know that her striped socks were a gift from Obanai? He gave them to her because she was initially very embarrassed wearing her uniform. Speaking of Obanai and Mitsuri, they both make an appearance in chapter 137 of Tonikaku Kawaii. Mitsuri has an insane appetite, but can you guess how many sticks of dango she can eat in one sitting? Go ahead and pause the video now and comment down below your answer. Well, the correct number is 100. Did you guess it right? Mitsuri is the love Hashira, but did you know that she didn't really know much about love? Even worse, she would sometimes ask Shinobu for love advice. But due to both of them being oblivious to love, their exchanges mostly became weird. Mitsuri likened Shinobu's love advice to a research thesis, since it mostly focuses on brain response, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. We all know that Giyu and Nezuko have a special connection. He's the first demon slayer that believed in her to the point of putting his life on the line to protect her. But did you know that Giyu's Haori was almost torn to shreds after the decisive battle against Muzan? What does that have to do with Nezuko? Well, Nezuko managed to restore most of it with her craftsmanship and sewing. Giyu was so moved by this that he sent her so many different gifts, kimonos, western clothes, hair ornaments, etc., that even Zenitsu considered him a potential love rival. Also, Giyu befriends Tengen and his family after the battle. When Tengen's child was born, he was allowed to hold the baby. Another fun fact about Giyu is that his crow is very old, so it tends to make mistakes when giving messages and moves slowly during battles. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and watch our other Demon Slayer videos.